1775. You are a farmer in Massachusetts. You hear a bell ringing from the church, an alarm bell. The sound of hooves clattering on stone, and you know that there's no turning back. But the question you need to ask is not, how did we fight? The question is, how did a group of poor farmers with no army, no navy, no advanced weapons manage to defeat the most powerful empire in the world? The answer you learned in school is freedom, independence, national spirit. But that's only part of the truth. The rest? It's been hidden in classified documents for 200 years. And what we just declassified will change forever how you see history. Here's what we've always been told. George Washington and the Continental Army fought for freedom. France helped them. Britain was defeated. A free nation was born. That's the clean version of the story. It's also the version that is almost completely untrue. Secret number 1. France was not a good friend. In 1974, the National Archives of the United States declassified secret documents that previously were only available to people with the highest security clearance. These documents revealed France's help had nothing to do with loving freedom. It was a military economic transaction. France wanted to damage Britain. France also hoped to seize colonies in North America to compensate for losses in India. France used American founders to serve its own purposes. This never taught in schools. Secret number 2. Who George Washington really was. Imagine you are George Washington in 1776. You own 10,000 acres of land in Virginia. You own 200 slaves. By the standards of the time, you are a millionaire. You are not fighting for universal freedom. You are fighting to keep your land. Why? Because in 1763, Britain banned westward expansion. That decision would limit your ability to expand and get richer. So you decide, fight for the right to control your own land. A report from the U.S. Department of Defense, declassified in 2001, shows 65% of military commanders were landowners. They were not freedom fighters. They were businessmen with a detailed plan. Secret number 3. Slavery and the greatest cover-up. Here's the part history doesn't want you to think about. A nation built on the claim that all men are created equal, but continued to enslave 500,000 people. The founders knew this was a contradiction. Trade contracts from 1776 to 1783, documents published by historian David Bryan Davis in 1998, show the founders actively exploited slavery to finance the revolution. They knew that if they freed the slaves, their economy would collapse. So they chose, keep slavery and lie about freedom. Who actually fought for freedom? Not George Washington, not Thomas Jefferson, but people like Thomas Peters, an escaped slave. He worked with the Black Regiment of Britain, Ethiopian Regiment, slaves who were freed by Britain to fight against the American Revolution. Britain understood something that American founders refused to admit. Enslaved people would fight for anyone who freed them, even if that was the enemy. Thomas Peters later emigrated to Canada and Sierra Leone. He never appears in American textbooks. Nanny of the Maroons, a female warrior from Jamaica. She fought against both Britain and America. She freed hundreds of enslaved people. Her name does not appear once in the American history taught in schools. Benjamin Franklin was not just an inventor. He was a spy. Documents from the French National Archives, declassified by the U.S. in 2015, show Franklin organized a spy network across Europe. What did he do? First, track the British military everywhere. Second, buy weapons from neutral countries like Holland and Spain. Third, even deceive his French allies by inflating contract prices to take personal profit. This was not an elderly inventor helping humanity. This was a cold businessman with a plan to make money from war. John Jay, framer of the Constitution. Private meeting notes from Jay, declassified in 2006, show he actively bought and sold slaves while he was writing the Constitution. He wrote, "All people have the right to freedom," but he owned about 60 slaves at the time. If the founders had massacred Native Americans to steal land, enslaved millions of Africans, deceived their allies, organized spy networks to make personal profit, then weren't their declarations of freedom and equality among the biggest lies in history? Compare this. Britain, a terrible empire, but at least honest about being one. America, an empire covered up with beautiful lies about freedom and equality. Which is more dangerous? A lie covered in beautiful words is always more dangerous. Constitutional Convention, 1787. Private Notes. Notes Thomas Jefferson deliberately kept secret until his death show James Madison proposed a Bill of Rights that would include enslaved people. Southern slave owners immediately objected. The debate got heated. Fear that the Union would break apart, Madison withdrew his proposal. This was embedded in the Constitution. The 3/5 compromise. Each slave counted as 3/5 of a person for representation purposes. It was wrapped in confusing language to hide the reality that the Constitution of Free America literally enshrined slavery into law. Now think back to the original question. Why did farmers beat the British Empire? The answer history teaches you. Freedom, independence, national spirit. The real answer: they weren't fighting for freedom. They were fighting for power, land, and money, and they were completely willing to lie about their purposes. What this revolution teaches us: truth is not an absolute thing. Truth is a weapon used by people with power. They use it to help them gain power, help them keep it, and hide what they don't want you to know. Those classified documents we just discussed, they were never actually secret. They were just things those in power decided you didn't need to know. They were hidden by sitting in government archives until 50 or 100 years pass. Then, and only then, they become public. And by that time, nobody is alive to be held accountable for what was covered up. This is the most important question. What you're taught today about history, government, and our leaders, is it truth, or is it a public story? Documents we are not allowed to see right now will be declassified in 50 years. And what will they reveal? We can only guess. But if history teaches us anything, the founders were not saints. They were ordinary people with personal goals. They organized spy networks, deceived their allies, and told lies so beautiful that the whole world still believes them 250 years later. So you're back in Lexington in 1775, a farmer. You hear the bell, you hear the hooves, but now you know the truth. The revolution you're joining is not about freedom for everyone. It's about power and land for a few. Would you still fight? Or the more important question, can you trust anyone? If you want to learn more about hidden histories, events were taught one way, but the truth is something else, subscribe. Because what we know is just the tip of the iceberg.